Alright, so let's get started. As you can see, here's the box that it came in. And you can see it's really well packed. Thick foam around all the edges and the bottom. And you can see the frame in this one and electronics in this one. Alright, so here's everything that comes in the box. And you can see it's all spread out here. Linear rails, frame, some metal plates here, the protection belt, lots of screws. They even give you the Allen wrenches, which is great, and all the plates. I'm going to try to sort this out versus the inventory. Okay, well, now I've marked all the inventory and figured everything out. I have put pictures on my website. See the links below, and you can see everything here is marked. This sheet doesn't have pictures, so I decided to tab everything here. I'm going to scan through slowly, but my recommendation is to go to the website to see the pictures, which are probably higher resolution, and tell you what's what. So everything was here as shown. I'm now going to cover steps 2, 3, and 4 in one swoop. So you start first with two of the 500mm, which are the A004. And also one of the 380mm, which is A003. Then you need these 5x25, and you need 4 of these screws, and this goes vertically. All right, so then we go on to step 3, where we take the M5 square pieces, which are A033, and we put them into the tops of both sides. And just slide them in. And we're going to build our cross braces. And this is step 4. We need they're showing one in the picture, but reality is you have to build 2 of them. And you take the A002, both of those, and you take 8 of these corner braces. Obviously 2 for each end. And then you have the M5 8mm screws, and that's the A037. The corner braces are A036. I don't think I mentioned that. So now we just go ahead and start fastening these. These are symmetrical. It doesn't matter which way you put them on, but you want to make sure they face outward. We're going to put in our center braces, and notice they say to align this with the shorter spot, 60mm here versus 65 down here. It's real obvious just by looking at it. But you may notice something here, and that is these brackets have been changed. And the reason being is the kit only came with 10 of these square brackets and 10 of these arc brackets. And in a later step, I discovered you need a total of 12 of these. So I've contacted the vendor to send me more of these because reality is there's 2 short. But conversely, they gave 2 extra of these arc brackets. And so these actually will substitute. What you need to do is, you see these nuts you put previously in here, M5 square nuts A033, which are also inside everything here. You need to line, put this in here, and stuff this in there carefully. Takes a little bit of pressure, and then line it up and start putting these in. we have to put our last A003 bracket on. And here it is, but no, we have to pick the right side. And the side you want to pick, of course, is the side where it's been scalloped out, so that the screws go in flush. Okay, so we'll now do these last ones. These two sides need to be the same. If you're not sure, take your ruler and measure. And I'm going to just check here that this is the side that has 6 millimeters, or 6 centimeters actually, 60 millimeters. And yes, it is. Okay, so now we can seal these up with confidence. These just slide on since it's already assembled. Had to get lined up. Sometimes it's a little tricky to do that. So now we lay out the plates as they want. So again, we still have the remainder of these 8-0-2-4 plates, and there's 4 of them. And lay them out like they did there. And then you also have the A019 plates, which are angled, and these will be put on your side like they did here. I'm going to do it the way they did it, though. Okay, and now we have to put on all the bottom holes, I have to put these All right, we're ready to do now step 14 and 15 together. The problem with the instructions again, as though they tell you to slide these on to the supports, they don't say which supports. So now, if you look at your inventory, you'll see you only have 5 aluminum rails left. There's 2 short ones, A04, 2 medium-sized A05, and 1 long one, A006. You're going to now take the last 2, or the A005s, which is the medium size that's left, and use those. And if you need to measure those, by the way, the A005 are 540 millimeters. And they're going to go onto the rails like this inside of these 2 pieces. And so we'll have to loosen it up to make that happen over here. It's already dropping in nicely. But we need to do something first before we make that happen. We have to populate them with 3mm square nuts. And so you're going to need to get actually a total of 36 of these square nuts, because you're going to be using 4 at each corner on each side. So that's 8, 16, 24, 32, but you have to put 2 of these nuts in the top rail on either side. That gives you 36. And then also you need 32 of these M310s. So to get these started more quickly, line them up with the vertical openings on the lower rail. Okay, so at this point I have everything lightly screwed in, and you can see how the rails stick out the back. You can see the two M3 square nuts on either side at the top, and you can see it's still loose though. What we need to do is line up the end of the bracket, the vertical bracket, and the horizontal bracket so it's flush. And I'm going to go ahead and move the camera again so you can see that. See how it's flush here to here. When it's flush, you're almost ready to lock it down. There's another challenge here you have, which is make sure that not only is it flush, but as you tighten up these screws, and do it by hand to start with, that you have these guys here lined up pretty well. Do the rears the same way, except what you want to do here is make sure that the tops of these are again lined up such that these are all flush with the top rail. And now we move on to step 21, where we have introduced these brackets, the A021 brackets, and we have a few of them ready that are here. You can see them, and we'll line them up for the picture here and here. But we have this other bracket here, and this bracket comes already with the retainers for the belt. So don't use this one. This came with two geared items, which is interesting. So you don't need them both. In fact, I think one of the gears we'll end up removing. But if you look at the picture, the one we do need is this one. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start assembling. And what you have to assemble here is take these A033 M3 square nuts, as well as your M310 again. These two have been your friend for a while, and you're going to need 16 of them to populate this. And you can So now what we need to do is turn the frame around. And so just grab it. I'm just going to grab it here and turn it. Totally screw up the camera angle here in the process, but hopefully it'll still be pretty close to where it was. And I hope you can see this really well. I'm going to kind of pull this back a little bit so you can. This is what's really important at this point, is this side here. And now we're going to be putting these brackets on here. And what you need to do is start with any one you want. But I'm going to do this one first because that way you can see what you need to do to get the brackets in there. Now, the instructions are not very clear, but what it looks to me is that you would align the brackets with the end. In other words, and this is going to require some eyeballing because there's, of what's going on. An eyeball with the end bracket to start with, the end of the bracket, this side here, and snug it down a little bit. But you want to get it lined up. What I'm using as a reference based upon the picture is just where this starts curving, just where it starts breaking into a curve, that's where you want to mount it. So you'll see actually the 3mm square nuts almost near the end doing that. Okay, now we've finished step 25. Well, now we're going to do steps 26 and 27. This time we're going to put it in standoffs, and we're going to put 4 in the front and 1 on the rear on each side. The camera is only showing probably just one side right now. And with those, you will mount them using the M310 screws or eating these like popcorn, but fortunately they gave us a lot of these. So I need 20 of these total and 10 of the standoffs total. And again, this is A029 for the standoffs and A028 for the M310 screws. So with that, let's go ahead and start putting these in here. We're now ready to move on to step 28. At this point, we're going to be installing these idler wheels. These idler wheels are A014. You're going to need 4 of them, 2 for each side. Again, this is on the rear side of the frame. They're held in place with an M535, which is A026. Again, you need 4 of these. To tie it down, you need to use lock nuts, and the lock nuts are these M5 lock nuts, A031. They're silver. I know on the little PDF they have, they look black. They're probably black anodized ones they have, or maybe the camera angle. So you need 1 for each one of these. And there's no tool for that one they gave you. These are 8 millimeters. So I recommend getting a small socket or just wrench. I have a little 8 millimeter socket here. You're not going to be ratcheting this thing down. And our next step is to install this stepper motor first. So there's only one that has double shaft on it, so it's pretty easy to use. Find. We're going to make sure the plug's at the bottom. It has 4 screws, and you'll put it in here. There's a lot of things that don't tell you about this step though, which was on step 29 that we're on right now. And that is, okay, we have to put in a sink gear. Okay, well the sink gear is available. The sink gear is an A015, and that's easy enough. But it also needs to put some set screws in it, and those are A030, as you can see, and to do here and here. Well, my kit at least, they didn't include the right size wrench, and I think that the one they missed, they included 2 of the same. I think you need a 2 millimeter wrench to install, Allen wrench to install these, and just, you know, put them in right sink gear that I put these on. And I'll do this first here. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do that now properly. Sink gear. Okay, the next step, step 30, is you now need to take this long rod. It says A012, it's, excuse me, A011, it's the only one like it. You also need to get the coupler, which is brass, and it has 4 places to put set screws in. And guess what? You'll need to get 4 of those set screws, which of course is that A030 again. So let's go ahead and put those 4 set screws in to get started. Shaft here has 2 sides to it, and obviously it has a bigger opening and a smaller opening. Well, obviously the bigger opening goes with the main metal rod, and you slide it onto here all the way down. to get it aligned, and what I end up doing is tightening this side, keeping it as even as possible, and I took a precision ruler and I measured the length from the bracket to the end of the holder and the distance from the ground to the bottom of the bracket, and I made sure that same measurement was held on both sides. Now, I did this later than I should have, but a colleague of mine and close friend reminded me that the rails that are shipped by the manufacturer are coated in shipping oil, not oil that should be used to actually run the PNP system. Clean up the existing oil, and the best way to do that actually is using WD-40. Just spray it lightly on everything, but also spray into the area of the actual sleds, the actual runners here. This is the most important part right here to clean up on all three pieces. Then I used alcohol, simple isopropyl alcohol. I just put it in a spray bottle so I could spray it on the runners, spray it into as best I could in the runners, run it back and forth to make sure it's cleaned out, and wipe everything off, and then the rail should be very clean. I used a little bit of this white lithium grease, just dab it on, and I touched either side of the rail because that's where it grips and that's where the actual bearings are. And spray white lithium grease, and if you notice on these runners there's actually a hole in the center here, and it actually goes into the interior of this, and it's present on one side of all of these. These are clips. We're going to use 2 on each side, and they're called the guide limit buckles, which is the A017. So we'll put 2 of these on either side. We're going to use M3/8 screws for this. They are guides. Now with these guides in place, what you want to do is push the rail against it, and now lock these screws in place as well. Over there is our Y-axis stepper. We want to have the steppers on the same side, so we're going to use the bracket over here. The first thing we want to do is do what's in the later step, which is to put some clips on here. So we need to have some M3 square with M10 screws in this case, it turns out. Okay, so now we've done these 4 loosely. Let's not worry about how tight they are yet because we're not using them yet. But the thing we need to do now is put this bracket up here and mount it. And it gets mounted with M3/8 screws right into the holes that are there right on this bracket. What you can do is put these two again together, and with your level you make it perfectly flat and on both sides. So perfectly flat. Now what you want to do is take a look, and it should visually look perpendicular, but here's another way you want to do. You want to take this thing and slide it all the way down and all the way back. If it binds at all, loosen one nut on one side. Take your pick, left or right, not in the rear because, or where you started here, because this width is actually perfect. Push it all the way back to line it up better, pull it part way back, tighten it down, and then do this again. We got them now on here, they're loose, but at this point we now need to put standoffs in, 4 on this side, 1 on this side. It's a duplicate of steps 26 and 27. We'll now build this side, which requires doing the standoff again. We'll get that started. For square nuts, we're going to put our slider up there. Again, this is oil based, so be careful. And use 4 of the M3/8 nuts. Okay, as you can see, this rail is now screwed in nicely. I did loosen the guy rail bars in order to get this in there without having to push it in too hard. Screwed it in completely, made sure it's centered. You want it perfectly centered between these two sides.